Now, she was also, who were some of the, in the rabbinical world, her contemporaries that she dealt with and spoke with and ultimately influenced to change
well,
things?
Well, Caro was one of them in Safat, but one has to understand that she was a businesswoman. She was not a rabbinic figure in her own right.
So Joseph Caro, he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, which is the authoritative manual of Jewish law.
She had gone to the great sages in Sfat at the time. Sfat was a great center, as you know, of Jewish learning in the same time that she lived.
Lurianic Kabbalah.
Yes. Luria was also one of them, yes. And she'd gone there because she wanted support in two ways. First of all, at one point in her life when she gets to Istanbul, she is shocked because the Inquisition has burned 23 of her fellow conversos, the secret Jews, on the trumped-up charge of being secret Jews and not being good Catholics, which they were supposed to be. And one of them was her personal agent there, her commercial agent, which was very foolish of the Pope when you think about it. So she goes to the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who was one of the most powerful men in all of history. And she says to him, this is unforgivable. And you've got to do something about it. Now, why would he care to do something about it? Why would he do anything for her? And this is one of the brilliance that I wanted to get through in the book and to research. How did she persuade these giants, like the Holy Roman Emperor, like the Sultan, like the Pope, to do her bidding? It wasn't enough that she had money. She had to have savvy, she had to have smarts, she had to have an absolutely incredible strategic mind to get it done.
And she got her way, didn't she?
And she got her way time and again. That's why I call the book The Woman Who Defied Kings.
Yes.
I mean, she twisted the Sultan round her little finger. And we have the letter. The letter is in the Vatican. It shows that he writes and says, these were my citizens, these were Turkish citizens, which they happen to be, some of them, and you had no right to attack them. But to get him to send the letter and to get him to send an envoy with the letter, because the letters would have gone by personal courier, was quite an achievement. And of course he does, in a way, try to explain why he had to do it, which he didn't have to, and get out of it and wriggle out of it. So she gets the Pope, on the defensive, which I thought was quite something.
Now she did, one of the magnificent things that she did was petition the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. And what was she trying to get him to do for her?
Well, she used her money and she used the clout that she had, and this is where she goes in a way to the sages of Sfat. She wanted, after this terrible incident of the burning, to make sure that the port, it was part of the papal states at the time, belonged to the Pope, was brought to its knees because of this terrible act. That was where, she was unlike a lot of the other Jews of the period who were pacifists. She believed, no, you don't sit down and accept discrimination and attack in any way. You go and you attack back.
She was in the position to do it as
and
well.
She gets the merchants of, she tries to get the merchants of Turkey and the Ottoman Empire, the Jewish merchants, to refuse to go in there and use it as a commercial port. It's a very important commercial port, but to move it to other ports on the Adriatic coast of Italy. And so that port is going to be dried up and it's not going to be there anymore. And so she can't quite persuade all of the merchants, Jewish merchants, she's now in the Jewish world, an overt Jew again, to work in concert, because nobody can easily get Jews to work together. They've all got their own opinions. And she's finding this out. So she tries to get the support of the great sages in Sfat to say, this is certainly, an enterprise which we put our stamp to. It's very, very worthy, and we encourage the merchants in our realm and, under our jurisdiction to follow along and to boycott the port.
And the rabbis had a little more clout in those days.
They had a lot more clout in those days, because the Jewish world commercially operated in Jewish law. And if you did not abide by Jewish law and you got into trouble with the Jewish courts, it was that you had an excommunication put on you, which had nothing to do with, well, it had something to do with merchants. No, you couldn't trade with other Jewish merchants, so it ruined your business.
And the Jews were good, very prolific.
Very, very important to each other in business. So if you lost your business, you were out of business, you were really up a creek. And so what they said really, really mattered. In another time, she went to them for for responsa, which is, as you know, high court type Jewish decisions in the Jewish world, because there was a conflict with her sister on the separation of the wealth of the family between her sister and herself, who should get what, when, and why.
And she wanted the Jewish law to be applied?
She wanted Jewish law to be applied, but she didn't want, she had to have. She'd had regular law applied in the Christian world when she lived there, and they had come out in favor of her, but she had to have a new application when she went to live in the overt Jewish world in the Ottoman Empire, because the other ruling wouldn't have applied, so she has to go again to the
rabbis
courts.
would mingle with her wealth division?
Yes, they passed. Yes, they passed judgment on whether or not she was correct in assuming.
Did somebody petition against her? Did somebody sue her?
Yes, her sister.
Oh, I see.
Her sister. She had a terrible internal battle.
So her sister brought the case to the rabbis?
No, she brought the case to the rabbis. She wanted her sister was working on the background, giving her hell. Yeah. So she wanted a judgment.
Okay, so the rabbis upheld the...
Yes, but it didn't matter in the end because her sister died. Her sister had never come with her to Istanbul. Her sister had stayed in Ferrara because her sister was a good time girl. Her sister was amazing. I mean, we found the inventory of her sister's belongings at the time of death, and the furs and the jewels and the lace and the bags of coins she had, which she obviously gave to people for various reasons. You could see she was a good time girl. And that made them human. I mean, they were tremendously human. Even Donna Gracia herself was incredibly well dressed. If you can just show us the photo of her. It's not a photo of her. It's a rendering based on what we know. When I show this again,
she's gorgeous.
It was that this is not our image of a Jewish woman 500 years ago. We see her in a muddy village in Eastern Europe, which wasn't true. Yes. She was regal. Yes. And she dressed in a regal way because dress denoted status, and she was very careful, and she loved spas. And she would go to spas all the time. And in one instance where the Holy Roman Emperor, who is probably the most powerful man in Europe in her day, Charles V, is trying to get her to marry her teenage daughter off to one of his rather disreputable noblemen, because he wants to get a hand on the daughter's wealth, because she was an heiress of great substance. And Donna Gracia is saying, no, you're not getting your money from me. And so there's a great standoff, and she won't go and see his deputy, which is his sister, in the court in Brussels, and she keeps giving excuses. No, she plays for time. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she's always got a stomach ache or a headache. Yeah. And then finally, when she does say again, defying the king and the emperor, and says, no, you're not getting my daughter, she has to flee Antwerp because she's going to be in big trouble at that point. I see. And she says she gets permission by saying she has to go to the spa.
Now, one of the other great things that she did, while we still have a little time, is that she did try to petition for certainly settlements or places to live for Jews in the Holy Land.
Yes. At the very end of her life is the time when the Jews of Italy particularly are having a very hard time. They're being put in ghettos. They are not allowed to trade the way they had. There are refugees coming in, not only from Italy, but the Converso refugees coming in from her original network in Spain. And although they are given a welcome of sorts in Turkey by the Sultan, she feels that they will never really be solidly safe unless they have their own autonomous nation. She can't give them the nation, obviously, but the Sultan did recently, well, within the last 100 years before she got there, he had conquered what we know today as the Holy Land, or Israel.
The Ottoman Empire, it was part of the Ottoman.
Well, he had made it part of it, and it was a non-producing from revenue point of view, and she guarantees 10 times the revenue if he will give her Tiberias and 5 villages surrounding it, a certain swath of land, for organized resettlement.
Okay, the Tiberias being the city, of course, that is right on the right on the Sea of Galilee.
Yes, and it was
the place of the Sanhedrin at one point.
But it also had a spa.
Okay, it was a beautiful, beautiful place for those that have been there today. Even.
It had a spa. It was where Maimonides was buried. I mean, it's
water,
the second.
Rich.
It's the second most holy place outside of the Mount of Olives for burial, and that she wanted to be buried there as well.
Was she?
No.